All right, back to politics now with 5 states heading to the polls today. Democrats are hoping to make up some ground that they lost in the Obama years, especially in the state legislatures. They lost 958 state legislative seats, 12 governorships, 62 House seats, and 11 Senate seats during the 8 years that President Obama was in office. All right, let's talk to Axios reporter Caitlin Owens, National Review columnist John Fund about this, and former chief of staff to Senator Mike Lee, Boyd Matheson, about this as well. Welcome to all three of you. Caitlin, that was a Real Clear Politics article that I just cited that had those numbers about, by the way, normally we'd be citing an Axios report, as we often seem to be doing these days more and more. That was a Real Clear Politics article, though, that had those numbers. That's really remarkable. But at the same time, almost to be expected, right, that when you're out of power, now you have the chance, if you're the Democrats, to get those seats back. Is today the start of that? Is that what you're hearing from Democratic sources?
I think Democrats are hoping today is the start of that. And, you know, that's why this Ohio special election is such, all eyes are on that, right? So this is a seat that Republicans have held for decades. And now there's a real challenge here from a Democrat. And the question is whether or not this Democrat can beat the Republican running. And, you know, even though these people will face each other again in 3 months, or, you know, there's going to be another election in 3 months in November for the seat. Right. But the point is, this is a measurement of the energy of both sides. You know, are their bases turning out? How excited is one side versus the other? And if Democrats are excited, is that excitement enough to flip a seat that, as I said, has been in Republican hands for decades? Yeah,
let me ask Boyd about that. Is it? I mean, how worried are Republicans, you think, going in, at least to tonight, in this special election in Ohio?
Yeah, I think this is a big one for Republicans. It's interesting. You have to remember that Ohio was supposed to be part of the blue wall that was going to save Hillary Clinton and give her the White House. This district, the 12th district, has been the red wall for Republicans, as was mentioned, for 35 years. And so I think there is some real concern. I think the biggest concern comes from those in the suburbs, those that are educated, a little higher income, are those folks who love the president's tax cuts. They like conservative judges. They like regulatory reform, but are a little exhausted by some of the rhetoric coming out of the White House. Will they show up today on a week before school starts? Will they really be ready to engage here? So that's the challenge. The other thing, in terms of this, is a real generic ballot. Neither one of these candidates are super exciting or very unique. So it's almost a generic ballot test that really could forecast a lot into the fall. Yeah,
it actually, as opposed to some of these other races where we say, well, this actually could tell us something about the midterms. And John, we were showing, footage of the president at a rally that he held out in Ohio, and we know that he can fire up the base. He's been able to do that since he started running for office. He continues to be effective in doing that. However, to Boyd's point, and maybe in Pennsylvania 18, this was the case in the Pittsburgh suburbs. In this case, it might be in the suburbs, in the Columbus suburbs. Is the president's message going to be received in these swing areas in the fall? What's your early take on that as you look at things?
Well, the president is very popular with the Republican primary voters. He does sway primaries. Special elections, not so much. He's had a very mixed record. The problem here is there's enough personal distaste about Donald Trump's methods, not his policies, among Republicans, that they may not turn out. Right. And I would watch the turnout numbers in this special election very carefully. Are they below the typical special election turnout? Democratic turnout, if it's up, is probably likely to stay up in November because the anger against Trump is so palpable. So the key, though, is will Republicans stay home in November, or whether they will be loyal to the party and want to stop Nancy Pelosi from becoming Speaker. If the Democrats lose, by the way, it's probably because their candidate made the mistake of saying, yeah, in the end, I'd vote for Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. If the Republican candidate loses, it probably is a referendum on Donald Trump.
It probably is. All right, so we'll watch that tomorrow. But you think about that. If you don't live in this district and you're just watching the coverage of it, think about it in your own life. If, 7th of August, maybe you're on vacation, you just got back, or you got a lot going on. Are you going to go out? Would you go out and vote today in your own district at home? No other race on the ballot, just a special congressional election. I mean, it's tough for a lot of people, so we'll see how fired up they are. Now, John, I think it was last time you and I spoke, we were talking about the president and the media. It seems like every time we speak, we're talking about the president and the media. Anyway, Karl Rove was on yesterday, and it was interesting because he was suggesting that maybe the president should cool it a little bit with these attacks on the media. But here's what Karl said. Take a listen.
The president's got to be doing more to get at the 18% of the electorate who somewhat approve and the 10% who somewhat disapprove, and I don't think these attacks on the media do it. They didn't work for George H.W. Bush in 1992 when he had a much milder version of it, which was annoy the media, vote for Bush, and I don't think they do it when he calls the media, when President Trump calls the media the enemy of the people today.
John, I'll start with get your thoughts on this first, but it's almost like kind of what Boyd was saying there in terms of those same types of voters and who you're appealing to with these types of attacks. But do you agree with Carl, John?
Well, again, if the president wants to just make this a base election and turn out his voters, I can see some sense in his strategy. But ultimately, in every election, because this is going to be close for control of the House, there are swing voters in the middle.
Right.
You can't wish them away. And by appealing to them, you basically do it best with policy and results, not with name calling. And by the way, the media isn't doing itself any favors by constantly yelling, liar, liar, pants on fire at the president. I think they're, like him, diminishing both parties.
Well, that is actually an interesting point. Caitlin, you can pick up on that if you want to. In terms of what are we supposed to do has been a question asked by a lot, well, on and off the air, in print and out of print, of reporters. Is a reporting or media enterprise essentially a fact-checking agency where everything the president says, no, that's not right, and then if you do that, you kind of spend so much time doing that you're not covering something you're supposed to be covering. But what's your take on that, Caitlin?
Yeah, I would love to talk to someone who has this one figured out. But, I think that's something that we in the media reflect on time and again. It's just there's so much news right now. And I think we can all say that the president, he knows how to create media attention. He knows how to keep us going in a 24-hour cycle of news at all times, whether it's his tweet or his Helsinki meeting with Putin. But at the same time, it's really difficult because while, we're all covering him, then there's real issues going on, too, with healthcare and taxes and trade and the economy. And it's just, and I think that sometimes this debate gets framed as, do you cover one or the other? And we get stuck in it when the truth is, all of these things are important.
No, I agree. We try to do that. I mean, Neil talks about that all the time. We try to cover everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you try to leave time for everything. If you have on cable news, you have 24 hours. You should have time, Boyd, to cover everything. But the president dominates this discussion with the media attacks. You can almost see him. If it works, right? If it works, you could see him afterwards saying, yeah, they are the fake news. They are the... And this bothers or should bother anybody in journalism, the enemy of the people. You could see why that gets under people's skin, because that, to me, I mean, this is maybe a personal opinion, but I don't think it's a very controversial one. That is over the top and talking about reporters in that sort of a way. But if it works, you could see the president after November saying, hey, told you so, right, Boyd?
Yeah, well, and you have to recognize this has been going on since the beginning of the country. I mean, John Adams actually signed into law the Sedition Act, which made criticizing the government illegal. Fortunately, Jefferson corrected that. But the interesting thing to me is that I actually think the best thing that the Republicans have going right now is the fact that the Democrats don't have that positive message that you described for those swing voters. We know what they're against, but what are they for? And that's the real challenge. And I think we're seeing this in Ohio. Neither candidate is showing what they're for. And this is what allows the president to keep hunkering down on kind of the negative piece. And then the Democrats seem to be biting on that and running a very anti-Trump campaign, which is to his advantage. Because in the end, Americans want to know not what you're against. They want to know what you're for. That will drive it in the fall. But ultimately, when it comes to the press itself, the president calling them the enemy of the people, that is an attack on the American people. That's a problem because it really is those first freedoms that we all enjoy. And again, everyone's a little exhausted and exasperated. We have to get to what's moving forward. Caitlin had it right. It prevents us from having the conversations we need to have as a country. Might be good for ratings, might be good for outside groups to raise money off of, but it doesn't buy us a better country.
I agree with you, and thank you to all three of you. Appreciate you coming on today.